Warning, this video contains both spoilers and potential spoilers. It also contains my opinion, but if you do not care for such, you may...
Come in.
Ah, you brought all the Bwonsamdi Virgin just like I asked, yeah?
Yeah, he is most certainly in there. Right, Skull? Yeah, he's in there. Does this cover his damn deal, then?
Yes. Now Virgin is gonna be dancing here just like he be promising.
Why dancing?
What?
You said you wanted Vol'jin to be dancing here. Why dancing specifically?
You not be questioning Bwonsamdi in what he be enjoying, man. If Bwonsamdi enjoys dancing, he enjoys dancing.
Uh-huh.
Tja, everybody be a critic of Bwonsamdi's status. Now why don't you and your Sparky Puche get going while Bwonsamdi gets his mixtape ready? Oh, Vol'jin, it'd be time to get your feet moving. What be this? This be empty. No. The boss isn't going to like this. Bwonsamdi only ever lost one soul.
Boss? You have a boss?
Yes, I have a boss. And he's the most wicked, cruel, merciless boss man you ever gonna meet. Oh, no. He's coming now.
Silly sorry. Ya be dead again.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. That was my video on Bwonsamdi's boss. I hope you enjoyed it. It was difficult to machinimate, especially for me, because it's still a very early concept. I've done it a few times, but I've not done it a lot, basically. Usually I have Tailcraft or some other machinimator to help me in machinimating the gag. Usually they do it themselves. But again, I really appreciate it whenever they do that, but sometimes I've got to do it. It's that type of process. But I want to thank Astralogion and Delyarath, who are just amazing. They're the two that voiced Bwonsamdi and Benarak in this video, in the gag. I really liked how it turned out, especially Astralogion. He's always great. Not to put down the voice actor for Benarak, because I really enjoyed that too. So thank you guys for voicing those characters. Go ahead and check out their YouTube channels. I'll put them in the description down below. Let's get right on this video though. So, as you can tell by our little intro and title, the Loa of Graves, better known as Bwonsamdi, has a boss. In today's video, we'll be delving into the possibilities of just who that boss might be. Let's jump right into it then, shall we? So for starters, let's talk about what we know about Bwonsamdi before we get into discussing what might lord over him. Interestingly enough, so far we know very little about our little Loa of Death friend here. Like most Loa, Bwonsamdi came into being before the existence of the Trolls, so most likely around the time of the Black Empire or shortly after it. This makes it unlikely he was actually a living troll at any point in time before becoming a Loa, despite his given appearance. This, of course, is assuming Bwonsamdi isn't lying and is just trying to make himself appear more powerful and above the trolls. His temple, or place of power, is located in the swamps of Nazmir on the continent of Zandalar, and is known as the Necropolis. His role as the Loa is a sort of caretaker or collector of the spirits of the dead, Although he seems mostly to have interest in troll spirits, he's not shy about taking souls from other races, like humans, Pandaren, Mogu, and so on, to his own personal realm known as the Other Side. The more souls he has, the more power he has. He's even shown interest in claiming the soul of another Loa when negotiating with the player and Talanji for speaking with Torga, where he is convinced to take the soul of Hyrik, the Bet Loa, instead. When Bwonsamdi does obtain a soul, he will either take care of the soul or give it its own personal hell. It really tends to vary. Bwonsamdi isn't exactly a fan favorite amongst the troll tribes, although there are those that worship or at least respect him. There are numerous other Loa people would rather worship instead. The Dark Spears seem to be an exception of this and have since earned his favor because of it, as they worship him. This is demonstrated best by Bwonsamdi going so far as to refer to Vol'jin as one of his favorites, and it explains his excitement over finally claiming Vol'jin's spirit. He's very fond of making deals that will benefit him in the long run. Some examples include his deal with Vol'jin, as seen when he fought to secure the Echo Isles from Zalazane, or when King Rastakhan was left with no choice but to turn to Bwonsamdi for aid when his own Loa Razan was lost to the power of Ga'Hoon, and his former advisor, Prophet Zul. It's clear that Bwonsamdi plays for keeps and revels in growing in power over the souls he's since collected. His deals, while beneficial for one he makes it with, are doomed in the long run to fuel Bwonsamdi some way and somehow. It'll be interesting to see just how Talanji takes on this role with the death of her father in 8.1, now that she is obligated to carry on her father's deal. Now, what does this say about Bwonsamdi's master? Well, if Bwonsamdi is more ancient than the other trolls, which is very, very ancient, then whatever is his master might be even more ancient, or at the very least, just as ancient. It also means whoever his master is also has a lot of control over Rastakhan, his royal line, the Zandalari people, while also having control over the dead that Bwonsamdi has collected. So we're looking for something that is older than the troll race, a being that also has some kind of connection to the spirits and the Shadowlands, seeing as that is the go-to place for ghosts in World of Warcraft, and whoever this Loa or boss is, they just might have some characteristics similar to Bwonsamdi, like making deals. There are at least 5 characters who fit the bill in potentially being Bwonsamdi's master, and really any of those stands a chance of being revealed as the man behind the curtain, some more than others, of course. There's also a chance that none of these will be the bots of Bwonsamdi. This is just my estimate, this is just my guess. So let's get on with this and let's figure out who this boss might be. First suspect on our list of the 5 who just might be Bwonsamdi's master is this expansion's most involved old god, N'Zoth, seeing as he fits the bill both in being ancient and loving deals.
Deal. I like deal.
As we've learned with Sylvanas, sometimes the true culprit is the most obvious one, and N'Zoth seems to be almost too obvious of a choice. After all, isn't he also a Jara and Deathwing's boss? It's not too unlikely that our corrupting boyo here would have a hand with Bwonsamdi at some point, possibly. Or, in N'Zoth's case, a tentacle. N'Zoth is one of the 4 old gods who had been spawned by the Void Lords, sent hurtling through space and crashed onto Azeroth before the Titans found it. He was also one of the weakest. However, he's still the old god who was, as previously stated, behind Deathwing's cataclysm, the corrupting of Azshara and her Naga, and making the Emerald Dreams spill into reality, as well as having created several other events and schemes. However, given that N'Zoth hasn't been shown to be involved with the Shadowlands yet, or on death, that robs him of the likeliness. It would go well with N'Zoth's whole entourage of superpowered pals, but I'm uncertain about him being Bwonsamdi's boss, especially when you consider his involvement with fighting Ga'Hoon, and that Zul and Queen Azshara were both fighting for his freedom, while Bwonsamdi was helping to fight against Zul and his blood trolls. However, it could just be that Ga'Hoon was a tool meant to distract or enforce the Zandalari under Bwonsamdi, and therefore under N'Zoth. I wouldn't put all bets against him, but there are others who I can see as more likely. I'd also find it less interesting that Bwonsamdi would also work for N'Zoth. Moving on to our second potential boss of Bwonsamdi, Heylia, ruler of Helheim. Heylia had been one of the first Valkyr under Odin, though she really hadn't much of a choice in the matter. She was presented the opportunity to usurp him with the aid of Loken, who had been swindled in on Yogg-Saron's side at the time. Together the two would trap Odin and his Valajar in the Halls of Valor, thus securing Helia's freedom and Loken's spot as Prime Designate. Later we discover Heylia has her own realm of dominance, and from it the Kvaldir were born. Now you're probably scratching your head at this one, as Heylia is dead. Didn't we kill her in Legion? Ah, but you would be wrong, as it turns out that Heylia did not die as we thought she did, something we find out thanks to an island expedition. So Heylia is still active despite her dethroning in Legion that had freed our best old buddy pal Odin from his imprisonment in the Halls of Valor. She also fits our bill of being ancient, proceeding after/during the Black Empire, loves making deals, and has a huge connection to the Shadowlands. Those are 3 definite checks for Heylia, but she was defeated by us, and while she survived, that puts a blunder of why Bwonsamdi would fear her. She also lost a lot of her Kvaldir and other souls thanks to us, plus the two almost seem pretty equal when you consider their backgrounds of caring for the dead and dominating their own realms. Although there has been a lot of death out at sea thanks to our war across both Kultiris and Zandalar, which are both seafaring nations. Though this would be a fantastic way to bridge Sylvanas' deal with her, that we still know very little about, and her ascension as war chief thanks to the spirits who told Vol'jin to make her so. That could have been under Helia's orders to Bwonsamdi to make Sylvanas war chief so that eventually she would turn to her for power and make a deal, but we know already that Bwonsamdi wasn't the one who whispered to Vol'jin when he was on his deathbed. It would also explain how she could rise to power, again thanks to her minion Bwonsamdi, leading to where we are today. They can, of course, still tell the story with Sylvanas and Helia's deal now, but I'm more under the impression the two of them might be working for the same thing, which in all fairness could also be N'Zoth or something else entirely, as Heylia has actually worked for Yogg-Saron indirectly in the past when she dealt with Odin, which would explain her more technical appearance, which all old gods and their minions tend to share. Heylia fits well in some of these categories, but I don't think she actually is Bwonsamdi's boss, more like his co-worker. Thirdly, we have Hakkar the Soulflayer. Hakkar the Soulflayer, not to be confused with Hakkar the Houndmaster, was a powerful blood Loa who had been summoned multiple times in Azeroth, and each time led to devastation and death. The Gurubashi being the main group of trolls to try and summon this mighty Loa to regain their foothold in Azeroth. The Zandalari in turn had called to the Horde to stop this, and together they succeeded in banishing Hakkar. We know very little about him other than the fact that even the Zandalari did not respond to him in kind, despite being a Loa. He's a mighty wind serpent who dominates over both blood and, interestingly enough, spirits. Now we might have defeated Hakkar, but as shown throughout history and patch 4.1.0, the blood god doesn't stay dead, and in fact has been shown to dwell in the Shadowlands. He even threatens us that he'll return at some point in the mortal realm. So he's got being ancient, dwells in the Shadowlands, and being a Loa who likely makes deals. All this makes him a huge candidate to being Bwonsamdi's boss. In a lot of ways, Ga'Hoon and Hakkar are very similar, and it's a wonder why he didn't appear in Nazmir with the rest of the Loa. Especially when you consider the origins of the Blood Trolls. One of Hakkar's own titles is Faceless One, and he's known to drive mortals insane. I believe at one point it was speculated he might even be a child of an old god. Perhaps Hakkar might have been an agent or creation for Ga'Hoon, or some other old god like N'Zoth or Yogg-Saron, etc. Also, it had been Prophet Zul who had practically encouraged Jindo to use Hakkar to ensure the Troll Empire would rise again, Though I'm sure Jindo was going to do this anyways, the priest would use Hakar's own power against his master's will and later be destroyed for it. Regardless, I've been under the impression that potentially our boy Hakar might be Bwonsamdi's boss, given his powerful role over the spirits and trolls. There's even a blood moon behind Bwonsamdi's temple, which is eerily similar to the one in Hakar's artwork. Perhaps it was Hakar who gave Bwonsamdi his power and role as caretaker of the spirits, before Bwonsamdi was a Loa, as I'm still under the impression he might have been a troll at one point, only for Hakar to feast upon the spirits after they've journeyed to his other side, much later of course. Hard to say, but it would be a great way to tie the Hakar storyline back into play, and just show how much deals can screw even Bwonsamdi over. Also, it would tie in greatly with Bwonsamdi's boss fascination with getting Vol'jin's spirit, seeing as it was Vol'jin who essentially both freed and doomed Hakar's/Zul's plan in patch 4.1, though it could just be because he was Bwonsamdi's favorite and the fact that he had been the second to have escaped him. I would simply love to see Hakar again, and did you notice that Rastakan's appearance is also kind of like Hakar's? Adds a little bit more foreshadowing to the whole situation, given Rastakan has to worship Bwonsamdi now, whose boss could very well be Hakar. Fourthly, Muzala, the god of death. Yet another Loa we know very little about, even less than Hakar. Muzala is the Loa commonly worshipped by the Sand Fury, already a red flag given those guys' recent history. His appearance is hard to figure as it's ever-changing, and his way of dealing with death seems less caring and more of an actual death. In comparison to Bwonsamdi, he's far more threatening in his approach. At least with Bwonsamdi you can make a deal, but with this guy, it's you're dead and a feast. The ever-popular Delyarath Gaming already spoke his piece on Muzala and this topic in full, which is fine and expected, and doesn't really stop me from saying my piece on it, though I do recommend you check it out if you haven't yet, because, well, I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have put him on this list otherwise. Muzala may very well be the boss behind Bwonsamdi, despite being an ever less popular Loa than Bwonsamdi. Of course, Bwonsamdi himself isn't very popular, and at one point, the Dark Spears weren't as flourishing as they are now, much like how the Sand Fury aren't flourishing currently. Despite their involvements in Zul'Zar and Muldoon, of course, which honestly probably put them even in a worse situation in regards to power. My point is that there's more talk regarding Bwonsamdi throughout Zandalar than Muzala. That just might be their arrangement though. Bwonsamdi is the people person, and Muzala is the boss who collects his employees' souls and feasts upon them. I think given Bwonsamdi's much more friendly approach, it makes it easier for the two to collect. Muzala also might have been the being that took Odin's eye in exchange to being able to peer into the Shadowlands, which could also be counted as a deal between the Titan Keeper and Muzala. This could be a lovely tie into Heylia, who could be an agent for Muzala after hearing of such an exchange between Odin and Muzala. And he might very well have returned Heylia to, we call it life or unlife. Ah well, he made her return potentially, meaning that Bwonsamdi and Heylia could both return for Muzala and are delivering a bountiful amount of souls his way. All the same, Bwonsamdi and Muzala could be working together as a duo, maybe. Or they could alternatively be bitter rivals. Both want to collect spirits of the dead to gain in power, and Muzala wants to devour the world's denizens, while Bwonsamdi wants all who die to go under him. So I could see a relationship between the two, whether it be rivals, partners, or boss, or minion. Or potentially, maybe even be the same being. We have seen Bwonsamdi get upset, and this seems almost like an alter ego of sorts sometimes. Love the story of how the two met, and how Bwonsamdi became his servant, if that's the case, of course. Hard to say right now, but he's a good candidate of being involved with Bwonsamdi in some way. Lastly, the fifth being who might be Bwonsamdi's boss, Zabala, Mother of Rizan. We must be on a roll today of Loa we know very little about, and this one is especially a lack thereof of knowledge. Zabala is the first of the Devil Swords, an extremely ancient being. She's the Mother of Rizan, which likely makes her older than the Zandalari Empire, so there's at least a check for that. Here's some information that I could find regarding Zabala. Some say that Zabala makes people's bodies swell up with putrefaction. Others that anyone who laid eyes on her became a living skeleton, or that she lurked in the shadows and came out at night and devoured people while they slept. Or that she waited near the roads and caused people to die coughing up blood. This is why the Zandalari locals stay away from the eponymous region of Zabala, where her bones remain, far to the south of Zandalar, and why the area has been claimed by the beasts. So Zabala doesn't sound very liked by the people of Zandalar, or at the very least, many are afraid of her. She also sounds like a being that is capable of making things into undead, ill, or just plainly slaughtered. Now this could just be a superstition to drive people away from her sacred grove, but the Zandalari don't take much action in driving the Horde or the Alliance out from these ruins. In fact, the Horde and Alliance take artifacts that are strictly in name of Zabala, which I imagine will not bode well. Now, as to why she might be Bwonsamdi's boss, well, I found Razan and Bwonsamdi's own conversation very interesting, as there was some clear shared history between the two, as they fought over Rastakhan's soul. Now, Razan clearly isn't Bwonsamdi's boss, given the attitude that Bwonsamdi gave him. However, I do think Bwonsamdi potentially might have to listen to Razan, given that Razan's mother might not be so pleased. I also speculate that Razan and Zabala did not get along so well, as Razan seems to be more positive in Zandalar's people, and even seems holy at times, while Zabala seems far more grave and feared rather than respected. I have the feeling that Razan represented life, while his mother leaned towards more death, which likely complicated things in their relationship. Also, Zabala's name is a reference to Zalalabal, the underworld in Mayan mythology, which is appropriate as the region where she now rests was named after her, Zabala. There is a troll lich there who even states he goes now to Zabala, which could mean the Loa itself, or whatever realm she dwells in. Now, there's very little known about her, but I do believe she's the master of the underworld and gave Bwonsamdi the position he has now as Loa of Graves. I'm willing to bet the Zabala will soon awaken and it will not be pretty, and all of Zandalar will serve as Bwonsamdi has. But those are my guesses as to who might be Bwonsamdi's boss. Some are probably more out there than others, but it might be something entirely new or something that I hadn't listed on here. I look forward to finding out. What do you think is Bwonsamdi's boss? Do you think it's any of the guys on here? Or something new? Or something that I didn't listed? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Skull Shorties, and I'll see you all next time. Check out my Patreon, Twitter, and other links down below. See ya!